Hello, listeners. Today, our story is entitled Pathetique. It's all about a poor white girl who's been angry at Negroes since childhood after learning her family lost its considerable wealth when slaves went free. She's determined to find her seat amongst rich white folk at any cost. Hailing from Eustis, Maine, few would have anticipated her academic prowess. Jeanette Claire Booney McNeil had graduated the 14th of June with anthropology honors and a theater arts minor from the University of Chicago. She was the smartest, but not the first, Eustitian to school beyond community college. In 10th grade, Ms. McNeil, a bespectacled broomstick of a teen with unkempt sandy blonde hair, rode with Dad in a sputtering, rusty brown pickup from Maine's northwest quadrant south to Portland for the second time in her life, all to compete in the nerve-wracking statewide debate tournament. Jitters aside, her unrivaled performance garnered gold and enthralled everyone, including University of Chicago faculty visiting a niece whose own effort had fallen short. Without hesitation, the good professor beelined it right to Ms. McNeil at the closing reception, and history is the rest. Not that any of this mattered to most of the other 618 Eustitians. They wondered why in the world anybody would want to school in Chicago and not the University of Maine. And if fancy was what she wanted, Bowdoin or Colby weren't far. Newly credentialed, Jeanette was another step closer to actualizing her childhood dream of never, ever having to work again. She'd long since convinced herself history had swindled her and was hell-bent on making it right. This seething daughter of the Pine Tree State had descended from well-heeled South Carolina pedigree, but there was nothing to show for it but uninteresting heirlooms. She had had to endure punishing childhood poverty, all because her great-great-maternal grandfather, Jethro, hadn't safeguarded the considerable family fortune after having been forced to release 183 slaves. Unnerved by the political quagmire and outraged by the spasmodic change in their circumstances, the Boonies enacted a discreet, well-ordered system of neo-slavery to subvene their faux socio-economic standing. Their delusions were underpropped by a pervasive sophistry that being slavers was proof of American royalty, lest they metamorphose from their cocaine-induced stupors into a hopelessly destitute caste, just as were the former slaves they had so unremittingly trampled. But they failed. Thoroughly disgraced, in 1901 the Boonies quietly migrated north to start anew in Maine, never ever to bask in their high-class status again. Upon learning the disquieting history, Jeanette had fixated on a singular notion since girlhood: I am from them but not of them. From the start, she had held those Negroes solely responsible for the family's demise. Her simmering resentment was barely containable. In college, Jeanette openly cultivated wicked notoriety among Negro students when, in moments of ungratified narcissism, she foisted upon them her preferred custom refrain with unabashed pride: "I am from them, but not of them." In her mind, that put her above all Negroes and ahead of most white folk. Jeanette's sights were dead set on clawing her way back into high society by hook and by crook if need be, but not before going under the knife for breast augmentation. So imperceptible was Jeanette's bosom that her first roommate had cherishingly christened her La Androgynie Bounie, which was way over the top. So Jeanette vowed to do something about that as soon as she possibly could. After a score of time-consuming consultations, she grudgingly settled for a size 34B, which her surgeon said was most appropriate for her twiggy frame. Underwriting the procedure required all the earnings from her 3-summer job, which was meeting with prospective students. Enterprising as she was, Jeanette sorted expense-free living deals with desirable blue bloods right through all 3 summer tides, not only to maximize savings, of course, but to boost the chances of a serious relationship with one of those rich lads. Be that as it may, to her gentlemanly acquaintances, these arrangements were merely gestures of noblesse oblige with benefits. Hers was an existential predicament. Jeanette's wit and effervescence easily enticed the most eligible bachelors, but unbeknownst to pauvre Miss McNeil, potential suitors invariably recognized that beyond the sunny facade lurked an impetuous pretender, barely able to uphold her virginal savoir-faire. She could not be deterred, however. "I am from them, but not of them." Jeanette perseverated for the duration of a lonely month-long recuperation, mostly spent in bed. It seemed a lifelong obsession would be getting the better of her, but it did not. Some 4 months later, she surfaced on Chicago's high-end party circuit, sporting ample cleavage, possessed of exorbitant strapless gowns, not to mention a handcrafted in northern India chartreuse mosaic box brimming with pricey jewelry, courtesy of serial paramours. There was neither shame nor sin in recovering that to which one felt entitled. The most affluent only would do, as many as it took to realize her nuptial fantasies. Some 3 years later, on a nippy autumn evening in Vienna, Austria, when the first night of her honeymoon with a very well-endowed, handsome young prince verged on consummation, Jeanette airily closed her eyes and wistfully ventilated, "I am from them, but now of them." Such was her desperation for a seat amongst Les Beau Mondes Blanche.